On Sunday, Chinese ruler Xi Jinping addressed 170,000 of his officials and military officers about the coronavirus outbreak. And he said that the epidemic exposed the quote-unquote obvious shortcomings of the Communist Party's style of governance. Well, of course, that's an understatement. And it's also the closest that you'll ever get to having a communist leader admit error. And this is going to be, I think, one of the critical elements as we look at China going forward. There is, of course, a lot of error to admit. The first symptoms of coronavirus showed up on December 1 in China. The first case was diagnosed December 8th. There was a low-key public announcement on December 31st, but the real public acknowledgement, the first public acknowledgement of the epidemic was on January 20th, when Xi imposed some draconian measures. And now China is in mortal danger. So for instance, the economy in China is contracting. Oil demand is down 20% year on year. Car sales, for the first 16 days of this month, they were down 92% over the same period last year. Only about a third of Chinese workers have gone back to their job sites, and events all across China have been canceled or postponed, including, for instance, the Canton Fair. That is the big and premier trade fair in China. It is scheduled for April, and now it is postponed. A contracting economy, of course, is an existential threat to a regime that depends upon the continual delivery of prosperity as the primary basis of its legitimacy. And at the same time, the Chinese people are white-hot angry. A tipping point occurred on February 7th of this month, when a doctor in Wuhan, Li Wenliang, died. He was one of the Wuhan eight doctors who tried to warn his city and the rest of China about this pneumonia-like epidemic. And since that time, the Chinese people have understood the dimension of what's going on. The hashtag was, "We want the right of free speech." Also, the Chinese people, like the people in Hong Kong, have adopted, "Do you hear the people sing?" That is that politically charged anthem from Les Miserables. Also, at about the same time, you had leaders in Beijing, in the academic community, start to talk out loud about all of these issues. So, for instance, you had one professor at Tsinghua University call Xi Jinping, quote, "not very smart," and he demanded that Xi step down. This was at the same time as you had a number of academics write an open letter to the National People's Congress, and that letter was entitled, "The Right of Free Speech Starts Today." I think that what we are seeing is essentially the Chinese people understand that the disease, of course, is coronavirus, but the real disease is communism.
Amen.
Now, the boldness of these recent developments suggests that the Chinese people are, for the first time in 2 decades, 3 decades, are starting to lose their fear, not only of Xi Jinping, but the Communist Party itself. And then the question becomes, well, why are we concerned about all of this? I think there are 2 reasons to focus on. First of all, beginning on February 5, we have seen both the Communist Party and the Chinese Foreign Ministry lay the groundwork for blaming the United States for the spread of coronavirus in China. And that was especially evident just a few hours ago when Dr. Zhong Nangshan, who was the hero of the SARS epidemic in 2002 and 2003, actually said, well, yes, the first diagnosed case of coronavirus was in China, but the origin was not in China. That is tapping in and laying the theoretical foundation for the notion that the United States deliberately spread this disease in their country. Yeah, it's ludicrous. Yeah, it's groundless and totally irresponsible and dangerous. But the point is that this ludicrous and dangerous charge is basically telling us that Xi Jinping is going to lash
Well, as each of us knows, this is in many ways a very trying time in our country's history, and I appreciated very much the opportunity last night to talk about the ways in which I've been singled out by this angry, intolerant mob and their donors. And obviously, President Trump is under constant attack by people who really want to transform America. We all know what transform means. It doesn't mean make a little better. Transform means fundamentally change this wonderful, yet imperfect, but wonderful country we're so proud to live in. We have two great guests on CPAC Live today. We have Secretary David Bernhardt from the Department of Interior, somebody I've known for many, many years and is doing a wonderful job, very assiduously working through the department to get the policies that will make our lives better. And we also have the former Attorney General from Florida, Pam Bondi, who just returned from a great tour of Wisconsin with my wife and with other great women leaders. But first of all, it's my honor to bring on CPAC Live Secretary David Bernhardt. Mr. Secretary, great to be with you today.
Well, great to be here.
We really do appreciate the work that you're doing over at the Department of Interior. So many issues go through the Department of Interior that people might not automatically think of, but one they do think of is our great national parks, so many of our monuments, the things that demonstrate and show to us our great and diverse history over almost 250 years and more. Mr. Secretary, what are you doing to ensure the fact that these monuments, which have stood the test of time, will continue to stand for our kids and our grandkids?
Well, as you know, Matt, the president loves our country deeply and recognizes the incredible American experience and what it's brought to the world. And the president, watching these mobs literally attempt to rip the history of America out of the ground, has responded very decisively. And Interior is a guardian of these monuments that are on federal land that we manage. And he's done two things that are incredible. The first is really to agencies and to criminals. He has said, listen, number one, if a criminal attempts to vandalize a monument, you protect the monument. Number two, if they succeed, you investigate the crime, you prosecute the crime, and you severely punish those who are successfully prosecuted, both criminally and civilly. And he said, hey, David and other agencies that have responsibility for guarding these monuments, if you need help, you can ask for help. And that is phenomenal to give us additional law enforcement resources should we need them. But the second thing the president has done is not just stopped with let's be tough on the criminals. He's gone farther, and on July 3rd at Mount Rushmore, he gave what I believe is one of his best speeches ever.
I agree.
And he laid out a vision. He laid out a vision for a national park of American heroes, a statutory garden, if you will, and challenged us by developing a task force to initiate the development very quickly of a National Garden of American Heroes to ensure that we add to ensuring that people understand America's great story. And so we're in the process. We met earlier this week as a task force, and we're in the process of beginning to invite people to give us suggestions of where this garden may be. And also, the president laid out 30 American heroes that he recommended be included, but we have room for more. And so we'll be asking people throughout the country for their ideas of the exceptional Americans whether it's law, philosophy, art, science. Who in the world do they recommend be included in this wonderful statutory garden? And then the president went one step farther and directed agencies like the NEH to work with us to create educational programs to tell America's great story regarding the founding documents and our founders. He is not going to tolerate this concept of lifting America's history from the pages of the book.
Now, you have our secular history, you have people that have led the way in society, but you also have the underpinnings of America. And you explicitly, obviously, don't have any kind of religious role with your job, but you can't understand the founding of America without having a deep appreciation for the courage of Christopher Columbus, who sailed the ocean blue when the world was supposed to be flat, and he wanted to demonstrate to everybody that science teaches us something different, and he brought Christianity and civilization and so many great learnings to a new part of the globe. He's under attack. You have people who are trying to literally deface statues of the Virgin Mary, of our Savior Jesus, attacks on churches, on cemeteries. There's a blend here between the faith that our First Amendment enshrines with our ability to either practice or not practice our faith, that also continues into our history as a country. You can't appreciate George Washington, Frederick Douglass, or Abraham Lincoln without reading their speeches, by which the concept of faith and a creator is imbued throughout it. Do you understand, as just an American citizen, how emotional this is for everybody?
Oh, not only do I understand it, the president understands it. And the president, specifically on Rushmore, talked about precisely that issue. I mean, the reality is, and my law enforcement officers and I have dealt with this mob. And let me tell you, when you look at what they're destroying, it's very hard to figure out what their message is, except let's destroy America. Because here's the reality. Gandhi has been attacked. Lincoln has been attacked. Grant has been attacked. Jefferson has been attacked. The veterans of World War II have been attacked. That's not a message of anything other than chaos, destruction, and anger at all of America. And we're not going to tolerate that. There are great, when you look at our ideals, it's impossible to ignore those relevant teachings from faith. It's just impossible to ignore them, and they don't need to be ignored.
And there's been a long tradition, obviously, even on federal lands, of having people who have led in various capacities, which is why this idea of a monument to our heroes is more critical now than ever. Let me ask you this question, Mr. Secretary. Is there any resource you need, any legal authority that you need, that you've asked from the president or the White House in order to secure these monuments, that you've been denied?
Oh, no, the president, here's what the president has done, and this is huge. The president, by making clear to the Department of Justice and others that these crimes needed to be prosecuted, our investigators are rounding these people up, we're arresting them, and we're going to prosecute them. And they're going to find out that it's not jaywalking to go try and tear down a monument. These were all carefully placed on the public square with generally the direction of the United States Congress. And if you want to tear one down, you can go through a process. We can always be looking to improve our story, add to our story, as the president's doing with the garden. But if you want to take one down, there's a process to go through that's lawful. It's not self-help. But what I really need to convince these people of is when they try and tear one down, and when we catch you, you are going to end up paying big time. And I think that will be the deterrent. It will be a wake-up call. This is not jaywalking. This isn't going out and having fun because there's nothing else to do during the a shut-in experience by some of these democratic cities. This is a big-time crime, and we're coming down hard. And we've scared these people. I mean, the reality is now we're rounding them up. They're calling us to say, hey, I might have been involved in that, because they know we're on their heels.
Good. I think that's great. The other thing is I worry about so many elites in society who have jumped on board this anarchy, this destruction, which is resulting in the deaths of young people of color in our big cities, the inability of businesses to reopen in our big cities. You know, when there's lawlessness on the streets, it doesn't always hit the white elites. It oftentimes hits the immigrant, the person of color, the person who's new to this country and just starting out on the ladder, trying to make a life for themselves. And we appreciate what you're doing to try to make it very clear that it's just not going to be tolerated.
You are so right. The people that are harmed the most by these big events tend to be those that live in the neighborhoods that these are occurring in, and it's tough on people. And I think at the end of the day, we have to remember the real message here of empowerment is responsible regulation, a great growing economy.
That's
right.
right.
Let our capitalist system thrive, and make sure that all Americans have an opportunity. I came from a very, very modest background, incredibly modest, and I was able to, have a chance to go to school and then move on from there. And all Americans have that. We have to remember, when we focus on these negative actors, they want to destroy us. And we need to really remember that we are a country of incredible opportunity, of incredible access, and we should not forget that, and we should not shy away from being candid about it.
I agree. Now, look, so many of these big corporations have been fueling some of these very scary anti-American groups. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they thought they were doing something to heal the racial wounds, which we all want, but what they actually did is helped foment violence. Maybe as you're going about thinking about how we fund for this wonderful new memorial, we should go back to the old idea where our biggest companies, our biggest American companies, like they did at Mount Vernon and so many other, which I know is not a national monument, but what they've done at these visitor centers. I think you guys should go back to those very same companies who have been fueling this hate. Give them a chance to actually build something beautiful.
I think that's a great idea, and I think that we have the authority to accept that type of support. And look, we all can agree that this country is wonderful. We all can.
That's right. And talk about building things. People don't immediately assume that at the Department of Interior, but recently you've taken even additional actions to make sure that when we say we want to rebuild our infrastructure in this country, and as the president always talks about, because he is a builder, building up this economy, that the government gets out of the way, because the government always tends to be the brakes on any project. Under your leadership and the president's leadership at the Department of Interior, there's a new day for rebuilding America.
The president, because he's a builder, understands that our country is often completely paralyzed by analysis, and we're not telling good projects yes and bad projects no in a responsible time. And he freed us up. Literally, he took action this week to finalize some regulations that will have the most profound effect on the ability of the Department of the Interior and all other agencies to move at a rapid pace. He reformed some laws, some regulations regarding NEPA, and it is going to free us from a overly unnecessarily bounded system, and it's going to be incredible. Interior was a leader at beginning a process 2 years ago to do this, and we took some of our decisions, went from averaging 5.5 years to now taking 1.2 years to be done. And we'll even do better with these new regulations. So it's really an incredible opportunity to move America forward, and that's all the president's about.
You know, sometimes it takes a good lawyer to stop a lot of bad lawyers.
Yes.
We got to have good lawyers on our side, and we're glad that you're on our side. Is it safe for the American people to go visit our national parks, or should they believe those that are telling them that they're going to become a super spreader?
Let me be very clear. There's nothing better for Americans than getting outside on some space, having an opportunity to social distance and enjoy the great outdoors, whether it's at a local park or whether it's at a national park or somewhere else on our public lands. It's good for your health physically, it's good for your health mentally, and it's even good for your health spiritually. And there is nothing that indicates from any expert that that's a bad idea. So get out there, enjoy it. enjoy the public lands, spend some time with your family, resetting during this period of time. It's rejuvenation, it's inspiration, and it's solace.
Oh, what a great way to end this interview. I couldn't agree with you more. As society is trying to react to dealing with Chinese corona and these other questions in society, what a great time to go visit your national parks. You'll have a great family. You'll have a great time with your family. You'll help the national park, and you might just do your soul a little bit of good.
That's right. Have a great one, Matt.
Secretary David Bernhardt, thanks so much for all the great work you're doing over at the Department of Interior. Thanks for all the work you do at appearing at CPAC and taking the message of what the president's trying to do in all these important areas, including rebuilding America. And thanks for being with us on CPAC Live.
Thank you.
And we're going to be right back after this actually rather alarming video. And we'll be talking about what's going on around this country with the former Attorney General of Florida, the great Pam Bondi. I sometimes watch these scenes on Twitter or Facebook or on television, and I just can't believe what I'm seeing. And those harrowing scenes from St. Louis would definitely go in that category. Watching that couple try to defend their property while these Black Lives Matter Incorporated, I don't even know what to call them, basically stormed their property. And I think they were scared. And I think a lot of Americans are scared. There's a lot of good people that would like to see racial harmony in this country, but there's a lot of bad people that are exploiting racial divisions and tragedies in an effort to take the country down. And nobody understands that better than our next guest, the former Attorney General of Florida, a great friend, a wonderful supporter of the president's, Pam Bondi. General Bondi, great to have you on CPAC Live today.
Thanks, Matt. Love joining you today.
So you've watched what's going on around the country, and even this new news apparently that the people who beat the cops yesterday in New York City, that one of these perpetrators is back on the streets instantaneously.
Matt, this guy's back on the streets this morning. That is such a slap in the face to all of our great men and women in law enforcement. I mean, we all saw those horrible videos of what they did. This was a peaceful protest started, by the way, by clergy in support of police. Police were there. That's what a protest should be like, peaceful. These guys pull up, they pop a trunk open, they have baseball bats in the trunk. What they hit the police with, it looked like some type of giant cane. We all saw it. They're over the wall, beating these police. These police officers, one have been on the force, I think, over 30 years. His face is bloody. They catch the guy and they let him back out. That guy is back out on the streets. Who did that to law enforcement? That's battery on a law enforcement officer, multiple officers, and he's back on the streets. So that's unreal. And, before I was Attorney General, I was a career prosecutor. And I think people are forgetting. I feel like we're in this alternate world now, Matt, where people are forgetting what our police officers are there for. They're not just there to arrest bad people. They're there when someone calls 911, when a child needs help, when all of our citizens need help. That's why our police officers are there. And it's a slap in their face letting that guy out. It's really a tragedy. And somebody else is going to get hurt, and we all know it.
Well, and they are getting hurt. This is one of the problems we have is when you have a general disregard for following the law, especially these are very simple and much needed laws. Like you can't walk up to somebody and just start beating them with a stick, especially if they're an agent of the government. It really is, it's unnerving. Now that department head in New York City earlier in the year took the knee, in kind of fraternity with peaceful protest leaders on the death of George Floyd. But he has been somebody who has been trying to work with these protesters. But what it demonstrates is it's not about whether or not that cop is working for racial harmony and proper policing. It's about the destruction of America and the inability of cops to do their job, period.
That's right. It sure is. They're trying to defund our police. We know that. What did they take away, Matt? $1 billion from our police in New York? Yet they're still supposed to be out on our streets protecting us. I'd be hard pressed to want to go to New York right now, given what's happening. And I feel so sorry for the families of those police officers. They're all taking early retirement. They're calling in sick, and there's a good reason for that. But yeah, these guys, they just attacked. It was a vicious attack on video. So there's no doubt, what they did to these police officers, yet that guy is free on the streets right now. De Blasio should be ashamed of himself. Really despicable what that man's done.
So look at these states that have embraced socialism. You have California with its indebtedness, its sanctuary cities. It's the fact that Los Angeles and San Francisco have been basically turned over to their own version of CHOP, with people doing slop on the sidewalks and breaking the law willy-nilly. Illinois, we all know the violence of Chicago, the city Barack Obama came from. He was going to bring all of these great policies to the whole country. Unfortunately, he did. What's happening in Chicago is spreading throughout the country. New York, which you great people in Florida are getting the beneficiary of, because literally hundreds of thousands of people are fleeing New York. A lot of them have means. Some of them don't have means, but they don't feel like their families can be safe in New York. I've looked at some of these statistics of what's happening in Florida and in Texas. You're getting a lot of new people because Americans simply won't put up with it.
That's right. That's exactly right. Florida people, I'm hearing from developers, I'm hearing from builders, people are buying houses sight unseen in my state, which is going to be great for our economy and going to be great for our state. And we welcome people, and our taxes, we all know, are much, much better in Florida. But look at, Matt, look at Seattle, look at Portland. Look at Missouri, that couple in Missouri. When you don't have your local law enforcement, your mayors, who basically control the police chiefs, they hire the police chiefs, not backing up your citizens, that's why it's so important, people out there, to focus on getting conservative, pro-law enforcement elected officials at our local levels as well. Because the federal government, we can't do it all.
You just came back from a great tour of Wisconsin with my wonderful wife and with Katrina Pearson and with others. What did you hear from the great women of Wisconsin?
Well, Wisconsin women are incredible. We had such a great trip, and it's so good being out there again instead of virtually and getting to meet these incredible women. And a lot of men came out, by the way. And you know what? Women care about the economy as much as men do. They want to get back to work. They want to get their families back to work. They want to get their kids back in school. I talked to Secretary DeVos before we went on the trip, and she wanted me to assure everyone in Wisconsin and throughout the country that she and President Trump are doing everything they can to get our schools open and open in a safe manner. And I think that probably resonated the most among the women in Wisconsin. It also goes hand in hand with what we were saying about law and order. You've got to have law and order. You've got to have a safe place for our children to go to school. They've got to be safe walking to the bus stop. We've got to have our police officers. We can't replace them with social workers out there trying to take the place of our police. So it was a great trip. It was so positive. And I don't know if you heard, we diverted our trip a little bit because we heard there was a huge statue of Lincoln that, thank goodness, was still standing. So we went out and saw that. We went to local businesses, met a nonprofit that were doing incredible things with canines, a family who had lost their child to cancer, and they're paying it forward with an incredible nonprofit called Emma Loves Dogs, by the way. And you can see all the great work they're doing to support our law enforcement in Wisconsin. So we saw a lot of great people on that trip. And your wife is a rock star, by the way.
She's awesome. And my daughter, Alyssa, joined you guys. And I think you really touched her. It was really interesting for her to hear the stories. A young person, a young woman can watch the news and have a very different perception of America. Too much of it is fake news, as we know. And instead, she went out and talked to real people out there in the heartland. And she didn't meet people who are scared. No. She met people who are hopeful. She didn't meet people who are angry and bitter. She met people who are working hard and are concerned, but they're optimistic that America can still get it back together.
That's right, Matt, and it was great being out there with her. She's wise beyond her years, and
Unfortunately.
No, she's wonderful, and I sent her a little present too. And she can carry on a conversation with anyone and ask her great questions. And for her to meet other people around the country like that, I think was really a great experience. But you're right, and that's what was so good for us to be out there, to see how positive people are around this country for the president, for his policies. And like you said, optimism. We've all still got to have that optimism. And we live in the greatest country in the world. We know that. We know that. We know President Trump brought our economy up to the greatest it's ever been once, and we know he's going to do it again. And just so proud to be out there supporting him with your wife, your daughter, Katrina and Penny Nance, and a lot of other great women as well. Saw Becky Clayfish out there. They've got a great lieutenant governor in Wisconsin who we all love. So it was just a really positive trip, and I think a lot more are coming. You're going to see a giant Women for Trump pink bus all over this country soon.
You see the pink bus, just pull over and go listen to these great people talking about what a Trump second term would look like. But Pam, the other thing, I don't mean to bring you back down, but the important role you played in the Senate to defend the president against these impeachment charges and successfully pushed back on them, and the Republicans really stuck together, except for one guy. I can't think of his name. It's kind of it's almost like a sports first name, who we lost on one vote, who also happens to want to align himself with the leaders of Black Lives Matter. It's disappointing, but I guess you can't get them all. But do you think that if Nancy Pelosi holds on to this majority in the House, which I'm going to say again, I think is very much imperiled, I think Kevin McCarthy and his team can take this majority back in the House. They only have to win 17 seats, and they have lots of Trump districts in which to win. Do you think if she holds on to that gavel, which I hope she doesn't, do you think that they'll press impeachment all over again, name the topic, it won't matter what it is, they'll just make it up and go right after him again?
You know, Matt, when we used to say they wanted to impeach the president since he came down the escalator at Trump Tower, that wasn't a joke. That's real. They've been talking about impeaching our great president, going after him from day one. Is it going to stop? No, of course it's not going to stop. Is it absurd? Yes, it's absurd. We sat there and witnessed a waste of hundreds of millions of dollars for that impeachment trial. We couldn't even quantify. It cost so much money, so much time for nothing. We knew it was a fine phone call, one phone call the president made. We all know that. And to sit there and watch the president and his family have to go through that and have to defend an innocent man, a great president, was sickening. We knew without that one person that we were still going to prevail. And the Democrats knew we were going to prevail because it was all a dog and pony show for them. You know, we saw Nadler and Schiff every day make a mockery of the U.S. Senate. And it was a joke, them arguing in front of the Senate. But it was just, it's going to happen again. Sure, it's going to happen again. But you know what? We're ready. President Trump is ready. And there's no tougher president in America's history to stand up for what's right. And he's going to keep doing what's right. And that's why we've got to stay out there like you're doing every day. We're all doing and supporting him.
Let me tell you, I'm a lot happier away from my basement. I want to be out there like...
Unlike Biden?
Yeah, exactly. Now, let's be clear. That is Hunter Biden's former rec room, okay? I don't want to know the history of that room, but... I can only
imagine, given the things I know about Hunter Biden. And believe me, only a tip of the iceberg came out at impeachment hearings. You know, but yeah, there's a lot more.
I believe in the concept of having a House blessing, and I think that they ought to immediately try to get that scheduled. But when I look at the great Trump family going all over this country, Laura Trump, Eric Trump, who's also running a lot of businesses, but Donald Trump Jr., Kimberly, Jared and Ivanka in the West Wing. And I was talking to a reporter yesterday about some of these campaign changes. And this reporter said to me, yeah, the Trump kids really are out there, just like the Biden family. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. I see this packed schedule for Hunter Biden. I mean, he is everywhere. He moves so fast. You can't even see him.
Well, that's probably because he's probably in China now doing business, or back in the Ukraine. Who knows where he is making all his money with the help of his dad's name. That's a joke that a reporter would really say that to you. You know, Matt, it's funny because working in the White House for a short time, I got to see Ivanka and Jared in action every day. And we know everything Jared is doing with the president for our economy, and Larry Kudlow working so hard together. But the things that Ivanka has championed are really foster kids, the leave for working mothers. She's really come in there and championed a lot of issues for women. And she needs to get a lot more credit than she gets. I watch those two firsthand work so hard every single day, not for themselves, for this country.
I agree, Pam. But remember, this word keeps getting thrown around on social media. They say about people like you and me and so many of the people that are watching this show in our CPAC community online, they say, write down the names of everybody who is complicit in helping President Trump. And I know what that word means. That means that there is almost something illegal and something un-American about standing up for this president. That is how extreme this socialist Democratic Party has become. They want to criminalize a difference of opinion on political positions. And so that's why Ivanka Trump isn't going to get the credit, because she's quote unquote complicit with helping her father to be a better president. So all of us need to understand that. They're not just coming after President Trump.
They're coming after all of us.
They're coming after each one of us. And you know what's the saddest part of all? They're even going after statues of Jesus, statues of Mary, statues of Abraham Lincoln, and underneath it all is they're coming after this very concept of America.
Right. And going after some of the great abolitionists. It's unbelievable. We've lost law and order if Joe Biden gets elected, but he won't get elected. And you know what? We can tell them we're not complicit. We're active. We are active supporters of President Trump, and we're proud of it. And, you know, no more silent majority. No more. I'm out there proudly wearing my Trump hat, my Trump shirt. Right. And that's what we've got to do. And, you know, I'm getting a lot more positive feedback. Some people are still whispering, we love him, but I've given away more of my hats than I've kept. People love them. So now I keep a stack of them with me and pins. And people love this president, and we can't be afraid anymore to speak up for what's right.
That's right, conservatives. No more whispering. Stand up. If you love George Washington, proclaim it loudly. If you love Abraham Lincoln, proclaim it loudly. If you love President Trump, wear the MAGA hat. Yes, you're going to take, you're going to get some persecution for doing it. But the more of us who will stand up, we're going to realize there's 100 more people behind us who are a little bit worried about standing up, and they're going to stand up as well. And to Mayor de Blasio, I just want to thank you. Because literally, because of your incompetence, and unfortunately a lot of people have died at the hands of your incompetence, and Governor Cuomo as well, literally hundreds of thousands of people are moving from New York, and many of them are going to Florida, some are going to North Carolina, some are going to Georgia. They're moving to the red states, and you know what that means? More votes for Donald Trump in these battleground states. So you know what? Maybe this is karma. Heading back to Mayor de Blasio.
Bring it on.
Bring it on. Pam's enjoying the fact that her housing values are going up, and the socialists in New York City, their housing values are going down. Pam Bondi, we appreciate you so much being with us on CPAC Live. What a great show. We love coming with you every week. We have gangbuster shows for you next week. You know, we've pulled together an even bigger team here. It's small, but it's big for us to try to bring you great shows 3 times a week, and we really feel like we're hitting our stride, and we appreciate you so much for watching. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we will talk to you again next week.